a surge of fear and adrenaline to sharpen your decision making.
Hi everyone, welcome to Priority Holder, and today we'll be playing Temur Snapcasters in the Timeless format. Now Snapcaster is just a classic card, 2-1 flash, you can give something flashback, and we recently picked up a cousin of it in Songcrafter Mage. It's a little more color intensive, but it also can do like the flashback thing with maybe some cost reduction. And anytime you pick up redundancy for a card in Magic, you should pay attention. So we're going all in on Snapcasters, Turbo Snapcasters with some backup help from Tishana's Tidebinder to stifle some nasty things that come up. So yeah, we're just trying to stifle, spell pierce, lightning bolt, remand, and mana drain our way to victory. So let's jump into some games. Alright, this is a pretty strong hand. Really happy to have some like turn 1 interaction and a spell pierce just in case something starts going horribly wrong. We can prevent that, and we can also grab like a Triome or something if nothing happens. Alright, so the opponent is going to put a Chrome Mox on the stack. We're going to fetch right away. Red is a more important secondary color in this deck because it's for Bolt and Songcrafter, so we can usually get green mana at our leisure. Don't have to spend so much life for that. So going to spell pierce the Chrome Mox. Now they could have like dark ritualed to pay for it. Alright, so they're following up with the Thoughtseize, and they're taking the Snapcaster. We have like a really redundant hand, so we're going to bolt in the Sink into Stupor and hold up Remand / Mana Drain and see what the opponent has. So they're going to fire off Dark Ritual, and I'm about to Remand it, but the opponent has already seen enough. So that was like a Thoughtseize concede from them basically, based on the strength of our hand. So you love to see it. I'm going to leave it the turn 1 fetch, have options for Stifle and Brainstorm. Would have loved to Stifle a fetch, but the opponent has a fast land. Guide of Souls, respect that card too much to let it survive, so going to lock up a blue-red source and take down a Guide of Souls right here. Just too powerful. Like if they play like a double creature next turn, anyway, it just gets out of hand quickly. Gonna hold up multiple options right here and see what the opponent has in store for us. Alright, so they're going to put a Johnny on the stack. So we're going to mana drain that and then move on with our lives. Now one thing to remember, like when trading resources with this deck, like they do have a Lurrus Companion, so we have to like answer that later on, or else they're just going to get all that value back. Now this is something new right here. So some trivia, I've played like 74-ish Timeless decks at this point, and this is in like 60 unique decks, and this is the first Brainstorm deck I've actually played. So putting some cards on top. So you may see me a little bit shaky with my Brainstorms here because I'm just not as used to it. It's like a little bit different play style. But let me know if you're interested in seeing more Brainstorms, tempo, control kind of stuff. Alright, so opponent is going to dash into Ragavan and shock in that land. Alright, so do we let them hit us and just clear like a card off the top they won't get any value out of? I am concerned about them getting too far ahead of us here, so I decided to stifle it, mostly just to deny them the treasure. Because if they like slammed in a Johnny or an Amped Raptor there, like then things can start spiraling. So that was mostly just to stop the treasure, and did seem like the stifle was doing us much good at that point anyway. So we do have a Songcrafter and like a reasonably stocked graveyard, so going to shock in the breeding pool. And you need to always be like mindful of what you have in the graveyard, but running like Snapcasters and Songcrafters. Alright, so they're not dashing Ragavan, so they're just playing it out and putting Lurrus into hand. So once again, like against these companion decks, especially Lurrus, like you have to have an answer. So going to Songcrafter and bolt down the Ragavan. Ragavan just tends to spiral too much. Going to just take care of it. Though once again, we do have to like be mindful of that Lurrus. Alright, and there's the other lightning bolt. So sort of got bailed out. I honestly think I maybe should have just waited for them to play Lurrus and then held up the option to bolt. So it's a tough call. Opponent has another Ragavan anyway, and Ocelot Pride. So they're not going right away for the Lurrus. They're fearing the open blue mana. So, and there's a Goblin Bombardment. Don't love to see that. Especially in conjunction with the first strike from Ocelot Pride, could be really tough if we were trying to ever block. So that could be really nasty. So we're going to delay their Goblin Bombardment temporarily. Mana Drain is really nice. And the opponent's playing it very patient. They know how valuable it is to stick a Lurrus, so they're just playing a bunch of other threatening cards in the meantime. So going to drain the Bombardment once again, because the interaction with first strike and Ocelot Pride is just a little too strong, and then they can start snowballing with cats, you know, so you have to be careful about that. Alright, so Galvanic Discharge, and so I'm going to let this happen for this exact reason. The opponent is going to try and bank some energy by only dinging our Songcrafter for 1 to let the first strike take it down, but that gives us a window to blow up their Ocelot Pride and make them like waste a card essentially. So the opponent bricks on the top of our deck, but doesn't have an unstable amulet. You could see me consider the Stifle right there, but they already had some energy. Like if they didn't have any energy, I probably would have snapped off that Stifle. And now we're glad we held on to it, seeing that they have a Static Prison. We have 3 steps ahead also. So I'm considering making a copy of Songcrafter right here, since we have like that mana drain mana, but it's just like not quite enough. Anyway, I end up waiting right there because it's nice to have Songcrafter plus enough mana to like actually do something with it. So we are gonna just let them hit us with Ragavan, but they don't really have, well, if they resolve Lurrus, then they can have some stuff to do. So we're okay with them getting treasures now, and our deck is not going to be very useful for them. So we're going to counter the Lurrus right here. Alright, so that threat has been neutralized, and the opponent is going to put a Static Prisonless stack. So we're getting, so our life total is getting sort of danger zone against them, and Static Prison is going to attempt to gobble up Songcrafter, but we're going to stifle that to deny them the energy and being able to like grab our threat right there. So if you like seeing these sort of control tempo games, please enervate the like button. So alright, and then they have a Johnny. So right as it seemed like we were stabilizing, the opponent has some great draws, which makes sense. Like that's what their deck is all about. Songcrafter is super clutch right there, so I'm trying to figure out the best course of action, and going to just pass right here. So Static Prison's going to die, and there's the Goblin Bombardment. So it's now or never. So I'm going to Songcrafter and take down a Johnny right here with the Lightning Bolt, because Goblin Bombardment would have made things go really badly. So I'm gonna take down a Johnny, and it's basically Ragavan and Cat versus 2 Songcrafters. I'm just gonna pass here with another Lightning Bolt in hand. So very happy to be finding all of our Lightning Bolts in this matchup. There's an Ocelot Pride. They do have City's Blessing. On their end step, I am just going to bolt Ocelot Pride. Alright, so they're going to just bombard us in the face. So once again, they are so close to killing us, because they functionally have 2 points of direct damage right now off bombardment. So I have to be very, very careful how we play this. And then another unstable amulet, because those can deal like passive damage to us as well. So have to be really careful. The opponent is just so close to closing this out, especially with like our painful mana base. Alright, so happy to see them brick with the land right there. Getting a little risky, going down to 4 life against an active Goblin Bombardment. So I was going to just grab a Surveil land, but then I'm like looking at like what we could draw right here. This is what I'm scanning through, and like drawing a land would be catastrophic. So I think you just have to use a Mystic Sanctuary here to get some action. So I'm going to grab a 3 steps ahead just to have something. And the nice thing is we could just use it to copy a Songcrafter and, you know, flashback a bolt or something like that, you know. So like it has some great optionality to it. Alright, so the opponent is going to get rid of a Static Prison, and they're passing to us right here. So this is me trying to figure out what to do. So I'm going to do something that's like a little greedy right here. I'm going to attempt to copy a Songcrafter to like flashback a bolt. Now what I'm sort of hope happens, and the opponent ends up doing, is like, that's just too bad for them to let me do that, and so they're going to send both their creatures to use Bombardment twice to kill the Songcrafter to fizzle our spell, which I think is a good play for them, but I wanted them to do that to like preserve our life total. Brainstorm is really clutch. Like, we are like quote unquote like Brainstorm locked right now, but like being able to like take the best of the top 3 cards for this situation is really nice. So we've got them down to 5 right now, and Tidebinder up. Alright, Guide of Souls, nothing we can do about that. And hanging on for dear life here. So the opponent is going to bombard us. So we have to think about this. Like, if it's Flage, we could stifle like a Flage trigger. But if it's Bolt, we will need to have stifled the bombardment trigger. So I decide it's just too risky to go down to 3. So I'm going to stifle the bombardment trigger right here. And the opponent had the lightning bolt, so they would have killed us had we not done that. So they take down the Tidebinder. We smash them to 2. We have Stifle. And we're just praying we can last one more turn. And they found a land, and that's it. So we lock up that one. So that was like an awesome grindy game against Red-White Energy. So really happy to bring that one home. And happy to have a double Stifle up for this next game. Chromox. So this is the power of Stifle in the timeless metagame. It already was good previous, you know, like when you can stifle fetches, but now you can stifle Chromoxes also. So we already have a red source, so locking up a green source right now. So going to stifle the Chromox. So basically it's like a useless card, and let's see what the point. And they miss a land drop, so they were all in on that Chromox right there. So very happy to see that. Now the next question is whether we can actually close out the game. All right, so they miss again. So I'm just gonna run a Snapcaster out there to put them under a clock at least. We need to close this game before, because these Chromox decks tend to be combo decks, and they don't need a lot of resources to get going, especially one that's like missing land drops like this. You know, it's like a low mana source combo deck that we're playing against now. This is sort of unfortunate. We are Brainstorm locked right here. Was really hoping to hit a land just to keep some more options up. Alright, so the opponent is going to grief us. Once again, the power of Stifle right here. Like, they spent 2 cards to do this, and it's a Creeping Chill. So it's clear we're playing against a Spy Belcher deck. And going to stifle the discard effect, and let's see if they have anything else. They're still missing lands, so let's see if Snapcaster can go all the way. Just Snapcaster beatdown. Very classic way to close games. And I'll go ahead and link a Scam deck right here. Seeing Grief on the other side. I love playing Scam, so. Alright, playing another Snapcaster just to really like double our clock right here. Because now we can knock them to 12 and we kill them in 3 attacks. And we have some like excellent defensive spells right here. So remanding the Chromox wouldn't be a very good idea, but stifling it is a good idea. So the opponent is just sitting pretty over there with 2 useless Chromoxes, and now we're rolling. Now we find the 3rd mana source, and we have multiple counters up, as well as options for Dig Through Time. So very happy with how this game's going. Opponent must be super frustrated with how things have been going. So sometimes, you know, Dig Through Time, you have to be careful. Like, you know, sometimes you want to leave some juicy stuff for Snapcasters and Songcrafters, you know. But in this case, like, we just want to refuel and just be able to answer anything they have, because we're just like way in the driver's seat at this point. So gonna crash with double Snapcaster, and yeah, one more turn, then we've got this locked up. And yeah, that's it. So on to the next game. It's funny because we can have those like grindy games like we did against Energy, and then the, you know, lockout games versus combo like that. Alright, double Leyline against and a Swift Spear. Not excited about that. So 2 Leyline of Resonance and an active Swift Spear, and we have no Lightning Bolt in hand, so like whatever it's going to do, it's going to do it. Alright, so there's a Monstrous Rage. Now the only good thing about this is that they can only have 1 roll at a time, so they're not going to get like 3 roll tokens. So I am going to Spell Pierce the original just to try and conserve some life points, but the problem is that even if the original is gone, the Leylines are each going to put a Monstrous Rage onto the Swift Spear. So we get slapped all the way down to 9, and then they cast a Callous Sellsword to knock us down to 1. So don't exactly love starting the game at 1 life against a red deck on our turn 2. Not to mention we have a very painful mana base. Like, we have, you know, tons of MDFCs, we have shock lands, so just praying right here that we can survive a bit longer. Okay, so the opponent does not have a black source for the Sellsword yet, so happy to see that. And we happen to draw an island, so we have some mana. Alright, so they did find a black source. pain land, so they're going to put Cell Sword on the stack. Going to just remand that. We're just trying to find mana sources here. We have like a lot of action. We just need to be able to deploy everything. And I'm going to fire off an end step Brainstorm right here. Alright, so we find some fetch land, but the thing is, fetch lands are just dead cards at this point. We have no means of gaining life in this deck. So just going to put those on top, but we did find a Sink into Stupor that we can play face down, or as a land, you know, and then what we're hoping to do at this point is just keep juggling their Cell Sword, and like, you know, if the opponent rips a bolt at any point in time, or a bolt wave, like, we're just dead, you know, so just trying to keep tying up their mana, and maybe we can actually kill them by making them activate their pain land 18 more times, you know. We'll see if we can actually remand that many times. So, alright. They're doing it again, and we're just putting them in like a Groundhog's Day situation. Now this will be like a shields down moment, but I really want to like just get the game progressing right here. Like putting a Snapcaster in play like is so helpful as far as like killing them or possibly surviving. The opponent is drawing like atrociously right here. They're just ripping lands, but they did go like very all in on their resources for like their turn 2 attack on us. So now that we have a Snapcaster in play, I think we can be, so we could Snapcaster remand again, but I decided it's better to just hold up mana drain now at this point, and thank goodness we did it, because if we did Snapcaster remand on the Cell Sword, we would have just lost immediately to the Slick Shot. So we just happened to time that perfectly with like our shields down briefly, and now the thing is, we're like the Cell Sword is just not very threatening to us as a ground creature, and so the opponent's packing a lot of haste creatures, so we just have to be really careful about that. So mana drain, and as tempting as it is to take another mana source, like I'm going to take the Bolt, because that can just protect us from like a Slick Shot or a Swift Spear or something like that. So it seems very important to hold on to Bolt. And the opponent, we're going to let them finally resolve their Cell Sword, and that the pain land's actually putting in work. Alright, so Ancestral Anger to draw some cards. This is a mistake right here. So I fire off the Bolt right away. That was a mistake. I should have let them place the Ancestral Anger triggers off the ley line first, because now they're just going to put them on our Snapcaster. So that was just a straight up mistake by me. In all likelihood, they would have, you know, put them on their own creature. It would have been a real savvy move from them to put some of them on our creature for that exact scenario, but I should have let them place the triggers first and then responded with the Bolt. So that was a mistake. We'll see if it comes back to bite us. The opponent does find another black source, so we're just going to play a tap land and pass. We have a lot of options, and despite the abundance of haste creatures in the opposing deck, we got to get them dead eventually. Like, we can't just keep hanging on here at 1 life. Now, the auto tapper seems to have screwed over the opponent here by using, I don't know what's going on. I think it works weird with the pain lands because it's trying to preserve life. So we're able to actually remand this Cell Sword right here. Now it is shields down for mana drain, so, but I just saw it as an opportunity to sneak, you know, a remand in there, just keep the cards flowing. So the opponent drops in their ley line, and it seems like we're finally turning the corner. So now we have Songcrafters plus mana drain plus Tidebinder, and maybe I should just be, and the opponent packs it in. So, but despite falling to, on our turn 1, falling to 1 life, we managed to pull out that game against red. And so anyway, this deck is super fun. Maybe not for opponents when we're stifling all their Chrome boxes, but it is for us. Alright, Malevolent Rumble from the opponent. Seems like just a perfect card to remand and just slow them down, because it loads up their graveyard, it finds them something, and it gives them an Eldrazi spawn. For, you know, so it just seems like a perfect card just to send back to their hand to just slow down their game plan. Alright, and the question is, do we pay the... I end up paying the 3 mana just so we can play 3 steps ahead and just preserve mana drain for later, potentially. Alright, so seeing them surveil a Null Drifter, this is one of those like blue-green Eldrazi decks that might be playing like oh my goodness, what's the green MH3 land? Shifting Woodland. Yeah, stuff like that. So this is a strategy you see pop up every once in a while. Alright. Taking a ton of damage, but like damage doesn't really matter against this deck. Like when they win, it's through overwhelming like monsters or omniscience or something like that. So going to just keep juggling this Malevolent Rumble right here and remand it. One thing this deck does is create a lot of Groundhog's Day situations for your opponents where they're just like, how many times have I cast this spell already? Alright, so they did have the extra mana, so they're going to get their Malevolent Rumble, and we can see some like absolute heavy hitters in their graveyard, including one of the new Ugins and a channel. So the opponent has some big ambitions, and just making sure I can know everything that we're going against. So we have to start closing the game at some point. Now I'm going to attack here, hoping that they would block, and going to pass. There is some risk of letting the spawn live because they might have been able to play like an Ugin's Labyrinth to get up to like 7 mana, which is like a magic number. We are going to mana drain the show and tell though. Don't want that happening considering the heavy hitters we've seen in their graveyard already. So going to surveil. Songcrafter's pretty nice. We do have some targets in the graveyard, and ultimately decide to get rid of it because we have a Songcrafter. And I am going to take down their Eldrazi end of turn. Once again, anything you can do to constrain their mana and keep them off their big spells is pretty helpful. Now they do have like a Shifting Woodland, so like we do have to be very careful about that. That could turn into like a Null Drifter at the moment. So, and with the mana drain mana's still a little bit tight, but decided to use the Dig Through Time just because hitting a land drop there is just really important, as well as like refueling. So it seemed like an opportune time to like pour the mana drain mana into like the Dig Through Time. All right, another show and tell. Opponent doesn't have double blue up, so we're gonna just mana drain it. And all right, so there's an Ugin's Labyrinth. And I'm actually going to stifle the Tuck trigger right here. I don't know if they would have put something under it, but once again, like keeping the opponent's mana under control is very important. And that might make all the difference right there. Alright, so mana drain mana. So I do a graveyard check here to see if we can Songcrafter Dig Through Time, but it's going to use at least 5 colored pips to do so, and it's as good as Songcrafter is at like reducing Dig Through Time and all that stuff. Like it just seemed a little risky. So opponent's going to fire off another cash grab, and we see an Ugin's Binding hit the graveyard. We're not super concerned about that because our deck is like all Snapcasters and stuff like that. So if they bounce all our stuff, like that's actively bad from the opponent. So going to play a Songcrafter on their end step, and trying to decide if we should Dig Through Time. Now it's going to eat up a lot of our stuff in our graveyard, but the power of Songcrafter here is that it can actually reduce Dig Through Time by 3 mana, so we don't have to exile as many things. We can leave something, and the reason I'm agonizing here is I'm trying to figure out what to leave against them. Like obviously we want to leave like a mana drain, but what else should we leave? And decide, it took a little while to figure that out. And going to grab a Snapcaster and a land right here, just because, and then a Stifle's an excellent draw. So just want to keep as many options as possible. Alright, we're going to crash in for 5. And the opponent has a ton of things we have to be careful about, like Shifting Woodland is one of them. And alright, so the opponent has something on our end step, and they have like a pretty huge Kozilek's Command. And that's one of those things that seems safe to let through. Like now they have 1,000,000 mana. They did get to like dig pretty deep, but we have a lot of like defenses up for what they could try and play right here. So, all right, they're gonna fire up Phyrexian Scrapyard, which is like an alchemy card that can like create duplicates of itself. So they did finally put an Omniscience into the graveyard. So right now I'm trying to figure out if this is a Tidebinder moment or a Songcrafter flashback Stifle moment, or if it's just a Stifle, and end up just stifling it. We don't want it to happen no matter what, but you have to be careful. All right. And very glad it held up the counterspell option here because the opponent is going to try and play a One Ring. So now we're going to be able to Songcrafter. The question is, do we mana drain or 3 steps ahead? Because 3 steps could be pretty awesome. Decide to just mana drain it. And very happy that we just used our like vanilla Stifle on the Shifting Woodland because it would have been really annoying for them to resolve a One Ring right there. That might have helped them get right back into this game. So going to Mystic Sanctuary here and put a bolt on top. So it's at this point I realized that we just have lethal right here. The opponent's like basically all shields down. So what we can do is bolt their spawn, attack for 8, and then snap bolt their face for the win right there. So one thing you have to be, sometimes you're so busy trying to survive is that you got to also remember when it's time to go for the kill. And so this is the instance where I realized, like, wait a second, like if I put bolt on top, we could just kill them. So I think sometimes if I'm too focused on surviving, I would put like a mana drain on top right there. But you got to remember to look for lethal when you can. So, all right. Opponent's cracking a fetch. Blue-white surveil land. Solitude hits the graveyard. So this is some sort of, controlling deck, it looks like. Alright, and so opponent puts a tap blue source in. We're going to crack our fetch. And then we get stifled. So the opponent is playing the same game as us right now. So don't love that because we need our mana sources. And the opponent is going to pass to their second main and then attempt to play a Narset. Now we're able to spell pierce that. But this game almost got really out of hand, like if they were able to stifle our fetch and sneak a Narset into play. So very happy we were able to thwart that, but that stifle is pretty devastating because we're down to just 2 mana against what appears to be like a controlling matchup. So gonna throw a Brainstorm out there. Like I'm okay if it gets countered. Like if it resolves, obviously it's really nice. So it doesn't appear that this is like a very important like bolt matchup right here. And like I said before, I'm not the most experienced Brainstorm person, so I may be like messing up some of these. Not cracking fetches here because I actually would like to draw like an extra mana drain, but wanted to keep as much optionality as possible, like Remand, mana drain, Snapcaster. Those are all nice cards. This is one of those instances where I didn't really want to put anything back. Opponent's just passing again, so I decided just to take this window just to put some lands into play. Alright, cracking 2 fetches here. And just gonna... Our life total is falling a little bit, so just want to try and eat up any counter spells they might have. But the opponent just lets it through, so we're just going to Snapcaster Brainstorm right here. We're just trying to get them to tap out on their turn. But it didn't seem like it mattered that much anyway. 2 Tidebinders and no reshuffle. Like we're happy drawing those again also. Like they're gonna come up useful at some point. Especially like we know that there's Solitudes in the other deck. Alright. And as the opponent's figuring out what they're gonna do, I'll go ahead and link a control deck of my own right here. Alright, Rediscover the Way. Just going to remand that. The opponent has, they don't have double blue up, and they haven't shown to have that many counters right here. And we're going to fire off an end-step Brainstorm. And Bolt could be pretty useful as like as just for its closing power. Just like double bolt to their face plus a few more snappy attacks. Like might get there, And I think I should have just fired off the bolt on the end-step right there. I don't know. I think I was just playing it safe, but just putting an intense clock on the opponent could be really important. So, but as we put the Remand back on top, let me know, what are your favorite blue creatures? Is it Snapcaster, Delver, Subtlety? Let me know in the comments. Alright, opponent's gonna Rediscover the Way and decide to just let it happen and then Tidebinder the first Saga trigger right there. And now I am going to bolt their face. And so we're getting really close now that we have 5 power creatures in play. And the opponent may be like a tap out control deck with mostly like Solitudes to like have some defensive speed, because we've mostly seen like Planeswalkers and card draw from like their stuff. as well as that brutal Stifle in turn 1. So, alright, Lorien revealed. We could stifle that with the Tidebinder, but we're just going to let that happen. And a Teferi Time Raveler. That is really strong in these sort of like controlling matchups, so we're just going to remand that. And, you know, we have mana drain up, so we're feeling pretty safe. Alright, so there's a Solitude. The opponent's trying to buy some time. We have the mana drain. And the opponent's in a tough spot because we can bolt their face and end the turn, and then that's basically it for them unless they have something else. And the opponent is seen enough, so we're on to the next game. Now I snap off this hand. This is the limited player in me. I see lands and spells. I'm like, alright, we're good. Problem is, we have mono tap lands and no like spell pierces or stifles. And this is what's going to happen some amount of time when you have shields down turn 1. So opponent has Dark Ritual into Necro, Chromox. So you could see like Stifle or Spell Pierce would have just like completely halted whatever they were trying. Like if we were able to like, you know, at their very least stifle their Chromox, or even better than that, Spell Pierce the Necro, would have been an amazing shape. As it stands, there's the Stifle, way too late. As it stands, we just have like a lowly bolt up. So our main hope now is to have them get way too greedy with Necro, and then we just bolt them for the surprise kill. So we'll have to see if we get that luckily. Now, it doesn't appear we'll have that luxury, seeing a Witherbloom Apprentice. That card is dangerous, and I'm going to get rid of it here because it also denies them a mana off the Springleaf Drum, but like, it is going very poorly, so the opponent's going deep on Necro again. Now, we've actually won all the games up until this point, and when I'm on like a big win streak, I like to keep playing until I lose a game, just so you can see how the deck loses. It's important to know. And this is how, so this I think is a very winnable matchup. Like Stifles and Spell Pierces and stuff are very good against them. And especially like Remands, like you can really, you've seen us like utterly wreck some combo decks in this series so far. So I end up remanding that because I'm desperate to find lands, but I should have just mana drained it because it just ups the storm count for no reason. Alright, so the opponent is going to wisely just Necro down to 4 to make sure we can't just bolt them into oblivion. So we are not drawing lands. We have some interaction that's just too late. The opponent they've just gotten to go wild. And so this is how you can lose games right here, is like a greedy keep, and also like just having the wrong spells. You know, like if this was like against energy, we'd probably be feeling pretty good with like just, you know, flashing in Snapcaster, stifling some stuff, you know, like we would have had the time to develop. But against combo decks, if you're not ready from turn 1, sometimes turn 0, it's too late. So, alright, so there's a Weather the Storm going off, and that's going to cause Witherbloom to really go crazy. And then there's the Tendrils, and that is going to be enough to finish us off. Well, I didn't really know what to expect when I started playing this deck. Like, I'm not usually playing this kind of play style, but it really overperformed my expectations and also just won a whole lot, and it was really fun to play. You're able to like just weasel your way out of a lot of situations with the combination of counters and stifles. Like you can just get there. Maybe could use a little bit more closing power, but you could see like we were still, you know, finishing off those games once we had like a vice grip on what was happening in the game. Another thing you have to always consider in Timeless is, should this be a Chromox deck? I don't think this one is. It's just a little too card disadvantageous, and I think just holding up the interaction to fight Chromoxes is the better plan. Memory Lapse is an option, but or also vanilla counterspell, but I think the combination of like mana drains and remands I think is stronger. One that I have like really wondering about is Once Upon a Time. Now we're not like super creature dense at the moment. Maybe if you throw a couple more, you know, subtleties in there, that would help. But this, like being able to grab lands or be able to like in the late game, you know, Snapcaster Once Upon a Time, grab another Snapcaster, like there's some like interesting things you could do, but once again, it may not quite have the creature density for it, but I'm very curious about this one. One that I also was thinking about is Confounding Riddle. So this plays really well with Songcrafter's ability to like reduce costs. So like Songcrafter can flash this back for 1 mana. So it could be like a counter unless they pay 4, or like a card draw spell. So I sort of like the modality of that. In that space, I went with 3 steps ahead instead, as like a versatile counterspell / creature copying card that plays really well with Songcrafter's cost reduction. I mentioned subtlety, but I could see putting a couple copies in there just to like really help safeguard. Maybe also as like a strong like flying closer. And this is so close to being like an awesome cavern deck. So the problem is like we have 2 wizards here in these 2. And we have 2 humans here in these 2, and so like they don't quite all overlap. You could maybe still run it, but anyway, that's the things I've been thinking about, and that's the deck. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see even more nonsense, please consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, thank you for your support. Your engagement with the channel helps me know what the people want. Thank you.